Hello and welcome to episode 126 of The Dive Down, a Magic the Gathering podcast focused on the latest decks, trends, and strategies for the casual spike. My name is Stanislav here in Chicago, and with me on the line from Denver, Colorado, it's the one and only Shane Beeps.
Stan, you know what my favorite part of this episode is going to be is the fact that you messed up the very first sentence. That bodes well. You messed it up before that retake.
Right.
People didn't hear it. I heard it.
The listeners won't know.
No, they won't. I know.
It's like when you're on stage, you're performing a play and you mess up a line, you're supposed to just act through it because the audience doesn't know, but now they know.
You know, it's like jazz. You're supposed to, when you hit the wrong note, you're supposed to hit the wrong note again, and then it's just like it's jazz.
Yeah, Shane, don't you? Jazz.
Yeah, this show is definitely my favorite weekly jazz session with y'all. Is that Dave I hear?
We just jam it out.
The Jazz Father?
The Jazz Father. That's me. I'm here. I just came fresh back from the countryside. I was camping this weekend. I got that camp stink on me still.
Yeah.
You
smell like a smoked sausage.
I usually smell like a smoked sausage. Now I smell like a smoked sausage and some kind of like not great beer.
Where did you camp?
I camped at a place called Turkey Run State Park in Indiana. And you want to know what? The state park was magical. It was some of the best hiking.
Nice.
Dude, it was amazing hiking. We hiked like up a river through some sandstone canyons. It was really unbelievable. I was not expecting it to be so high.
Sounds great.
It was some terrifying. Like I had to take my 5-year-old down a muddy ladder next to a chasm to make it through the trail that we were on. But
I don't frequently hike near chasms.
It was the chasm. Yeah. Chasm is a bad magic card. I don't know if you guys remember that card, but it's not a good one.
I also noticed in your photos that you were wearing shorts.
Yes.
No.
I was wearing shorts. I can't believe that was caught on film and that I didn't just appear like the shorts vampire that I am.
On this week's episode, we try to fill that awkward scheduling lull that occurs when we have to record a show right before spoilers start for a new set. So instead, we're going to kick off today with a historic breakdown reacting to the Thassa's Oracle ban. And then we're going to check on some historic results from the Insights 5K Invitational, which was a 2-format event, also spanning standard. We're only covering historic. Then we're going to check into the Modern Horizons amuse-bouche that we got last week from Blake and Company of Wizards of the Coast Employ. We're going to talk about 10 new and old cards that were shared last Thursday. And finally, we're going to have time to do a wind down with a classic Q&A. We got a bunch of great Qs. We're going to try to provide some good As. What personal secrets and revelations will emerge this time? Stay tuned to find out.
I have literally not looked at a single question that you put in these notes. I'm going to, for the first time, shoot from the hip.
That's great because I haven't looked at a single note that's within these notes this week. So I can't wait to just come in here and, do the same. Let's roll it. What's the Thassa's Oracle? Tell me.
You know what I'm going to do first is housekeep.
Oh, we do that. That's right.
And then I'll read the Oracle text on Thassa's Oracle. Shout out to the newest patron to join the Dive Down Nation, Martin O. Thank you so much and welcome. If you'd like to support the show, you can join our Patreon over at patreon.com/thedivedown. Gets you into the super secret Slack channel, gets you into our internal tournaments run by our fabulous TO Bob. Sometimes Ben helps out. Sometimes Orlox helps out. We got a sweet team of tournament organizers. Sometimes I frantically make judge calls in the Slack in the middle of games, and Jack is always there to make judge calls for us. Look at our little community, and you can join it too. Check it out, patreon.com/thedivedown. You can also support the show while playing digital Magic with a Mana Trader subscription. Our new coupon code is the Dive Down 2021. It's all one word, and the 2021 is numerical. So don't spell out 2021. That's long. Keep it short. Get 15% off your first 2 months of renting Magic Online cards with coupon code the Dive Down 2021 on Mana Traders. Let's jump into the breakdown. Let's talk about the worst kept secret of last week, the banned and restricted announcement. There was a point where we didn't think it was going to happen. It was like 4:30 Central. People were refreshing every 10 minutes.
Okay, so let's explain why we know this happens, right? So the way this works is the formatting for the URL that goes to these pages is the same every time. And so if you essentially just plug in every day that's in the calendar year into a URL, eventually a page might show up like that. There's like this page is not able to be accessed type thing, and then something will happen.
You get a different kind of error. You get a permissions error instead of a this page does not exist error is what happens.
Yes, thank you, Dave.
So so what you do is every day you go through every day of the year in your browser. You just type them in.
I'm sure that's what people do.
Maybe this is what MTG Bandswen should do.
So really quick, when we talk about a URL, are you referring to the Uniform Resource Locator on a server, on a web server?
Yeah.
The URL.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. So someone who had a lot of time on their hands was testing out URLs. They found out that there was one that was scheduled for May 19th. There was no announcement from Wizards. And then 10 a.m. rolled around. The article wasn't launched. The rumor mill spread. What could it be? People thought it might be Tainted Pact. People thought it might be Thassa's Oracle. Then someone shows up in Slack and says it's Manamorphose. That gave me a panic attack. Finally, 5 p.m. Central Time happens. Article goes live. It's a paragraph long. Thassa's Oracle banned in Historic due to the power level and recent performance of the Tainted Pact combo control deck. I'll just read what they wrote. It was so short. While Thassa's Oracle is a powerful card that has created combo decks across multiple formats, until recently, it wasn't a force to be reckoned with in Historic. However, with the recent printing of Tainted Pact and the fine-tuning of that archetype, we've seen the rise of the 2-card combo in Historic to the point that half the field in the past league weekend utilized the combo. Due to the power of the 2-card combination, and because we expect that Thassa's Oracle is likely to cause problems down the road as Historic continues to add new cards, Thassa's Oracle is banned in Historic.
Cool.
Boom. Simple.
We did it.
We did it.
Initial reactions.
I'm glad I didn't craft this deck. That's what, even though it was only going to cost me 5 rares to make this deck from all the draft chaff that I have, I'm glad I didn't do it.
So we have explained this deck, right, in the past, like how Thassa's Oracle and Tainted Pact work together.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. I thought so. Just everything blends together, you know?
Just so everybody remembers, it's a kind of I win combination because of factors.
That don't matter anymore.
It's a 2-card combo. Yeah, that's a good point. Doesn't matter anymore.
Blue-black control Shellish, sometimes Grixis, that had a 2-card win combo that required you to run a singleton cards in your deck for the most part, but there's so many good cards in Historic that you could easily fill a deck up with enough control elements to get to your combo and win.
It was basically Splinter Twin, right? Where you couldn't exactly tap out against them, and then they just sort of win more or less at instant speed. Not so instant speed that you can do it on someone else's turn, but you could win in response to someone doing something, to responding to a Thassa's Oracle trigger, for example.
Yeah, and of course, there's very few ways to respond to a trigger.
Yeah.
So that was the thing that was hard.
But you could just counter Tainted Pact. That's about it.
The last time I played against this deck, which was like Thursday of last week, I want to say, I played against them with Phoenix. Phoenix has a bunch of counter spells and post board, and I had to have 3 counter spells to be able to get through the turn where they cast both Thassa's Oracle and Tainted Pact because of the way that things worked out. I had to try to counter something with Mystical Dispute and Negate and finally Spell Pierce before they lost.
Nice.
All right. First question that, of course, I feel like we have to talk about, right, is like, do you think that this deck was deserving of a ban, or this card was deserving of a ban in order to nerf this deck and this strategy?
I think it makes sense, especially citing the actual reason they explained, which was Thassa's Oracle made powerful combos in other formats. I think they're referring there to Pioneer with Inverter of Truth. Whether or not Inverters are ever going to come to Historic is up in the air, but I think they kind of saw the writing on the wall that this alternate win condition is just too easy in this format and a lot of formats. So let's just protect ourselves. Let's get rid of this card, the actual payoff card, and see if Tainted Pact can maybe be a fun enabler for other stuff.
But was this deck too good?
It was too annoying. That's for sure. It was definitely too annoying. I didn't run into it frequently. I think I had around a 50% win record when I did play against it. Stan, it sounded like you didn't mind playing against it.
So I just stuck to Rogues in Historic, which is a tempo control deck too. So the way Shane mentioned, all you need to do is counter that Tainted Pact. I was able to do that a lot. For me, it just led to a lot of interesting games, win, lose, or draw. where it's just like they went a long time. You had to really make thoughtful decisions about what you're going to spend your resources on. And so, yeah, I kind of liked playing against it, and I felt like Rogues was a decent matchup too.
I mean, this is the kind of deck that I think was indicating that I had a fairly high win percentage, right? Like high 50s. I think the kind of the last sort of large data set we saw that had this deck in it. And that was an outlier from other decks that we've seen. So I think that's an outlier that WotC doesn't really like. And then two, like where I think we're getting at, Dave, right, is like this combo was really annoying on Arena. Like not only the fact that it was a fairly easy combo to get together as far as it looked like, but also the way that it actually executed itself on Arena was super tedious and annoying. Like it was actually better to let yourself go to a timeout, because then like the stack cleared itself automatically instead of you having to like click, what was it, OK or something like that over and over and over again.
Yeah, that doesn't make any sense. But infinite combos or massive clicky combos rarely make sense in a digital form, and so they're always going to be kind of problematic.
Yeah, I totally had people who presented the combo, Thassa's Oracle, trigger on the stack, they cast Tainted Pact and just sit there and click good game, and then
I mean, it's good game.
What am I supposed to do?
You concede.
I concede.
It's funny, like I the last like 3 or 4 times I played against this deck, I actually didn't. They didn't win. Like they never went off with Pact Oracle. Like they would cast Tainted Pact, I think, for like value. Like there was like, I'm in a bad spot. I've got to like Tainted Pact to get some piece of removal or something like that to buy myself a turn. And once I realized that unless I'm seeing that combo on the stack, like in that sense, it's just like, yeah, do what you want. Like I'm not planning on losing unless you make me lose. So go for it.
Did you get a sense of what this deck was doing to the format, considering how popular it was in apparent competitive play? Half the field in this one tournament was running it. From what I've gathered, the other half was mostly on control to combat this.
Yeah, for a pretty, like a decent job of doing so. I think the data that I was looking at, I think was maybe like 54-46, like in control's favor or something like that. So yeah. You cannot be dirtling. So like a deck like Is It Phoenix, or a deck, I think even probably like Still Living a Company, doesn't have much game against this because it's not executing what it's doing fast enough. Like I think the matchup percentages were not good for Company.
I believe Company very, very much. Although Company has like tax effects, which can sometimes help against this deck when you do stuff. Phoenix is okay. I think I think any deck that could play counter spells plausibly had a reasonable time against this deck, because then they had to stack up counter spells and then you had to stack up counter spells, and so you would go back and forth. But I do think that it kind of warped the top of the metagame a little bit to be around decks that could play counters, because there is no other way to interact with it other than speed. And honestly, the speed wasn't always there, right? So, like Gruul wins fast, but it doesn't always win by turn 4. And this combo pretty frequently did go off by turn 4.
Yeah, and it could like, even if it didn't, it was so many removal spells and counter spells and interactive spells to control the board or control a win con, like maybe like an Ember Cleave or something like that, right? Where you maybe get that turn 4 kill. Then they're removing the creature that the Ember Cleave is being cast on, or they're countering the Ember Cleave. So it's a kind of deck that didn't need to win on turn 4, but certainly could when there wasn't a deck that was playing interaction against it. And so it was just a pretty good predator, I think, against a lot of strategies that were out there. Both aggressive decks and like slower creature decks that maybe had some kind of stack interaction or taxing interaction, like you said, Dave.
What's also impressive is how versatile the deck could be too. You could build it to be tuned for a creature metagame. You can build it full of hand disruption and counter magic for controlling field. And I think that also contributed to some of its problems, is that as long as you have this really powerful 2-card combo, even if you're restricted by playing singleton, you can still find enough redundancy across a varied curve to actually execute a plan that can anticipate what your opponents are doing. So, okay, so Tainted Pact is still around. You can still functionally mill your whole library for 2 mana at instant speed, which means there is another potential combo payoff, and that's 4 mana Jace, Wielder of Mysteries. What do you guys think about a 6 mana combo?
Yeah, I mean it's I mean it's still like you can still do it on turn 4, right? Where like you can if you clear out your library and then Jace on turn 4, then
Not your whole library.
You do have to be careful. Yeah, you can't clear out your whole library.
well most of it.
Yeah,
much of it.
Much of it. Yeah.
I mean, because what does Jace do? Jace just thought scours you, right? So it's like 3 cards.
Yeah, but he has a passive, which is Lab Maniac.
Yeah, that's what I was getting at. Is right. Is that if you leave like 3 cards left and then you Jace and thought scour yourself, then you win.
Right. Yep.
Okay.
Yep. You just can't get rid of your whole library because you have to be able to cast the Jace without dying. That's all. That's the only thing worth mentioning. I mean, it's definitely harder, I think, to pull off because what do you do? Yeah, you could still run 2 Jaces, you still run 2 Tainted Packs, and kind of there you are.
You could also play Jace for value more easily than Thassa. The thing I can't really wrap my head around is whether or not Jace is easier or harder to interact with. Does it make the combo more vulnerable to interaction?
Well, certainly because it's not like a trigger like Thassa's Oracle is. So like if you let's say you play a Jace and what is it, a plus to do the thought scour or something like that, and then like with that on the stack, then you kill Jace, then his passive no longer applies and the person just decks themselves, right? So if you have Planeswalker removal, then you're good to go.
Right.
Unlike that annoying part of Thassa's Oracle, which is like Thassa's Oracle can die.
And that don't matter.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it is easier just because it's not it's not a trigger, which is like impossible to interact with.
Sure, but the tools to kill Jace at instant speed are what? Assassin's Trophy?
Fry.
Vraska's Contempt.
Yeah, I mean, there are cards that people run that are instant speed Planeswalker kill. Not to mention counter spells just still work better. Although they do have not force negation, pact and negation in this deck, so you have to kind of watch out for that sometimes too.
Yeah.
Yeah. Murderous Rider, people are telling us right now. Vanishing Verse is another one that gets rid of this card that people run. So
I mean, fundamentally, it's going to be worse enough that like I think we're already seeing the trends that there's very few people are even trying to play it. Maybe that will turn as people are like, I'm testing it and it's still pretty good. Like it's maybe lost 5%, which makes it still like a 55% deck or something like that, right? But I think as we'll talk about in this eSports 5K Invitational, I think we'll see what people are doing in the meta right now. And it does not include testing out Jace combo.
Yeah, I mean, I think bottom line, this deck was annoying to play against. It was reminiscent of a combo that people hated and that probably killed a different format, essentially.
Yeah.
And so they were just like, we are getting this out of here before it goes on too long. And instead of getting rid of the enabler, we're going to get rid of the win con this time, like they did in Historic. So, or in Pioneer. So
it is interesting also to me that it took maybe a month or so since Strixhaven came out for them to actually ban something, though they said
maybe less. Yeah.
I mean, they did say they were going to ban aggressively, and for a while, it looked like, with the exception of Tainted Pack, the impact of Strixhaven wasn't so disruptive to the format that it made it unhealthy in any way. It changed it up, of course, but it didn't kill it. And I think people are, in a lot of ways, still enjoying a lot of the decks that were enabled because of Strixhaven.
Yeah. I mean, I think that's a really important thing to mention, right? Is like WotC acting fast here is really good for the near-term health of this format, because I think until people really latched on to this combo deck, most of the decks we were seeing in terms of the largest amount of data we had were like 46 to 54%, which is like a really good metagame win rate of like 10, 12 decks. Like you have that many decks with pretty middling win rates and strengths and weaknesses against each other, then that's a metagame that people are going to really enjoy. But then when you get a deck, especially a deck that functions like the Pact combo did on Arena, then people are really going to be turned off pretty quickly. And then when you see the top level of players bringing this type of deck, half the field bringing it, then you know that we need to act fast. No one's going to be upset by losing this that badly, and we're going to move on and have Historic keeping an awesome format.
Shane is selling Historic. Who's buying?
Hopefully everybody, because
we already bought in, didn't we?
Yeah. It was for science. All right, so I think we got a good look about how we're feeling about that deck. So you mentioned the Insight Esports 5K.
Yeah.
Post-ban.
Yeah, the post-ban, tier 1, in quotes, 5K Historic Invitational. So
we weren't invited because we're invited to the tier 0 Invitational, just so everybody's clear. We're invited to the S tier because that's the cool one, right? The S one?
Yeah.
Yeah, S tier.
Yeah.
So this is the first big historic event since this banning of Thassa's Oracle. And I believe this is the culmination of kind of these qualifiers that Insight Esports has been having for the past few weekends. And there were 111 players who made this invitational. And unfortunately for us, it was 4 rounds of historic, 4 rounds of standard, then a top 8 of historic. So it's not the most revealing thing for us in terms of historic gameplay, but I did want to see what invested players brought to this tournament, how those decks that they brought performed on the day. And so let's first do the metagame breakdown of these 111 players. So Izzet Phoenix, our top dog at 22.5%. That's a lot of Phoenix. Next up, Jeskai Control featuring, what's that one I don't even know?
Is it Kahira?
Kahira, yeah, sure. So Jeskai Control, 12.6%. Jeskai Turns, a similar yet different deck, 11.7%. That's almost 50% of our meta, okay? I hope you like Izzet colors, maybe even some white. Followed up by that, we've got more white. Selesnya Company, 9.9%. Jun Food, sticking around as people realized it does not suck, 9%. Orzhov Auras featuring Luris, 5.4%. Dimir Rogues featuring Luris, 4.5%. Mono Black Aggro, 2.7%. And then we have a bunch of 2-ofs in Gruul Aggro, Golgari Elves, Dimir Control, 5-color Niv, and Azorius Control. Those are all, so that's about 1.8%. And then 12.6% Singletons. I put those in other. So that's our metagame. That's almost 50%, like I said. Jeskai Control, Jeskai Turns, and a ton of Izzet Phoenix.
Phoenix is back, baby.
Yeah, I mean, it was creeping up. I noticed this in the previous Insight tournament, I believe. Izzet was maybe the second most played deck on the day, and I think it also had a very good win rate that weekend. I think it was maybe 60% or something like that. And I think people realized that. I think people were playing it this week and saying, hey, this deck is kicking butt, so might as well bring it this weekend.
That's all I've been playing for the last couple of weeks, to be honest, since I dipped my toes into the Teamer and Izzet Prowess waters for a little bit. It's been at least a couple of weeks where I've just been like, every time I open Arena, I'm like, what should I play? I've just been enjoying Phoenix. I'm just going to play Phoenix. Fine.
Yeah, I feel like I need to finish crafting this because I've got most of it.
I did switch to the Sprite Dragon version finally, Stan.
I've been begging you since day one.
I did in this most recent sprint. I switched over to that.
Are you liking it?
Yeah. I mean, I liked it before. I like it still. I think it's good.
But there was a point where you kept saying you didn't feel like you needed it. And I kept insisting it's the best 2-drop it's the best thing you can do on turn 2. Where are you now in that spectrum?
I mean, it's nice to have another threat. It's nice to have another haste threat. I think it's the worst threat in the deck still, but it's good to have the extra threats. You have a little less burn. As a result, you're not running like Lightning Strike or any other 2-mana spells. You're not running, Expressive Iteration is totally taken over the space of Chart a Course. It's taken over for Thrill of Possibility, Strategic Planning. Like none of those 2-mana cards that we spent so much time talking about when we did our initial breakdown of what Izzet was going to be in Historic are there anymore. It's just Sprite Dragon and Expressive Iteration, and it hums. Expressive Iteration is very, very good. Very, very good in every format. It's very, very good in this format too.
Yeah, it's amazing because it doesn't even discard cards, but I guess it finds you your Faithless Looting.
That's the thing. You find your Faithless Looting. You got your couple of Lava Axes, and you're playing on different axes. Like Phoenix is great for some kind of late. Sometimes, occasionally, you get that early plan with Phoenix, or you get that late one where you're like grinding out with some other stuff, and then you get Phoenix's late. After you get them in the graveyard and go. But Storming Entity is the thing that really makes the deck that's the perfect companion to Phoenix in my mind, because it lets you have a different plan that still rewards you for your spells. And that's the deal. So
yeah, deck looks good, but let's talk about performance of these decks since we have win rates from the decks across the tournament. Phoenix was a clear winner this weekend, not only in metagame percentage, but in performance across 98 matches. It was 61.25% win rate. That is good. That's a good win rate when there's that many of the same deck in the field going against other decks that are likely prepared for it, knowing that it's a force out there. So yeah, if you like playing a deck like Phoenix, you're probably going to do fine for a little while until people are majorly text against it. let's talk about that really briefly. You guys play the most Phoenix. What's the best tech against Phoenix? Is there good tech against Phoenix? I feel like that just like it was in Modern, it had so many different ways to attack you that like just having a Grafdigger's Cage wasn't enough. Just having like a Relic of Verdunus wasn't enough.
I was just gonna say it's a little different than it was in Modern, because when Phoenix was at its best in Modern, Thing in the Ice was at its best in Modern, and so it had, you wanted to have matchups where either Phoenix was super good or Thing in the Ice was super good because it was wrathing people's or upheavaling people's boards, right? You don't have that in Historic, so what you're doing instead is playing a threat that is somewhat resilient to removal in Stormwing, and Phoenix is as a companion to that, and then you have your Crackling Drakes. That's kind of like another way to go if you get there.
Yeah, Crackling Drake is just so hard to keep from finishing you off.
But it's very fragile compared to Stormwing Entity because it dies to Fatal Push. But
I will. I play decks with Fatal Push.
I do think though, if Thing in the Ice was in the format, Phoenix would 100% play 4.
Yeah. Well, it's a huge card, and especially with Brainstorm. But I think
Orzhov Auras would love to face down a Thing in the Ice.
It'd be gone. I mean, that deck would be. It's already been waning, but with an upheaval effect around, that deck would be gone. The I guess tech against it. The hardest tech against Phoenix in Historic right now, I don't think is Graveyard Hate. Like, Graveyard Hate is important, but you die to, like, you can get around Graveyard Hate. I think
so many other ways to get dead.
Well, and you hard cast your Phoenixes, you play a different game, you get patient. Sometimes you abrade their stuff if it's a Grafdigger's Cage, but it's Selesnya Company that actually I think is the hardest one that I've seen because of Archon of Emeria and Thalia and other taxing effects that slow you down, and also weirdly, Skyclave Apparition is both good and bad against Phoenix in some ways. So it's really all about the timing that happens there. But what do you think, Stan?
Well, I thought you were about to mention Narset Parter of Veils. Like, that's
Narset's
another card
too.
I absolutely hate to see when I'm on Phoenix.
Yeah. And that's, I'm sure that's being played in the Jeskai control list and the Jeskai turns list. I'm looking at the Jeskai turns list right now. There is no Narsets here. I'm a little surprised by that. Guess there's not space for it, but Narset is, of course, a tough card. Yeah, there's no walkers. It's just spells. Yeah.
Importantly, I would say, I think I read this, I'm just parroting it. If you play Narset and your opponent's on is a Phoenix, don't take it down.
No, don't. Yeah, just let it sit there.
Just leave it.
You'll win without ever activating it.
Yeah, I mean, what you have to do is they have to shock it and hit it with a Phoenix. Like, that's what I have to do when I'm in that situation, and that slows me down a lot. But you definitely do not want to make it easier for me to drop a Phoenix from my hand and kill your Narset in the air with haste. But yeah, Narset is a really good card against it too. So it's cards that limit your ability to cast spells and your ability to draw cards that are the best against Phoenix. And I think kind of always were the best against Phoenix. Graveyard Hate's good, but it doesn't really help that much. So you shouldn't hard model like a Rest in Peace if you're playing Phoenix. It's fine to put them in your deck, but you don't need to have one in order to win. It's the other cards.
All right. Phoenix, 61.25%. The only other deck that had a large number of matches and came close to that was Jeskai Control at 30 and 25 or 55.6%. Jeskai Control, I think, is an extremely good deck. It seems like it has game against a lot of different types of strategies. It has game against aggro because aggro is not fast enough typically to get under it, especially with Lightning Helix and it's in its deck, and just one or two Lightning Helix just makes the game unwinnable because then they can just start wrathing you or counterspelling you or things like that, and the game is sealed up. But then it also has counterspells against combo decks, against decks that want to resolve just one or two really important spells. I think Jeskai Control is frustratingly good because I don't like playing control. I don't like playing against control. And so when control's good, control people come out in droves.
We're here and we're going to draw go. Get used to it.
Yeah. I mean, and Jeskai turns was actually sub 50%, 23 and 26 or 46.8%.
So that's very surprising to me for one reason. And that is, if you look at the untapped,
the untapped data is the best deck.
It's insane. So if you look at best of 3 historic from platinum to mythic, Jeskai
like 70%
turns has 70% win rate.
And we know that untapped players are typically inflated over the average, but Is It Phoenix is like 62%, and Selesnya Company is like 60%. And this deck is like, it's head and shoulders above the rest right now. So it's the kind of, I don't think this is, this is one tournament. It's 50 matches, 49 matches. So it's not, there's still tons of statistical anomalies that can be found in that sample size. So I wouldn't, make any decisions based on this. If you like Jeskai turns, keep mashing play, because you're probably doing fine with it. And if you don't know, Jeskai turns is the one that leverages like Lorehold Vekamoklis or like.
Yeah. So it's Velomachus. It's a Velomachus combo deck basically that lets you recast Time Warp off of Velomachus and Niv Mizzix's Mastery.
And it transmogrifies into Velomachus, right? Early off of like the Dwarf Fortress or whatever.
Yeah.
Dwarven Mind, yeah.
Indomitable creativity, yada yada.
So it's essentially a new combo deck.
Yeah.
That seems to have snuck in past Thassa's Oracle.
Did we talk about when Stan and I played some sealed in Strixhaven, and I opened up a pool against Stan that had 2 Velomachus Loreholds
How'd it go?
in it? I did win that particular matchup, but that was a weird pool to try to put together with 2 7-drops. It's a powerful card though. It's big. It has haste. It lets you cast spells.
Yeah. It's definitely a very powerful combo control strategy, which is never a bad thing to try to do if you know how to play a combo control strategy. Selesnya Company up next. Pretty sad showing. 17-22 or 43.6%. I mean, this is the type of deck that I think can have metagames to feast on and metagames to be beat up on. And here was a situation where it got beat up on.
I'm surprised by this just because there was so much Phoenix, because it feels like a torturous matchup to play as a Phoenix player, but maybe it's not as bad as I think it is. The thing that's funny about this matchup that I mentioned is just that idea that Skyclave Apparition, when they take one of your Phoenixes or one of your Crackling Drakes, you kill their Apparition, you get a 4/4 back. And that often is enough to just be able to attack another board. So there is some kind of weird stuff going on there where Skyclave is like not as good as sometimes I feel like, but it's a strong deck. Every time I play this deck, I feel like I want to craft it, but maybe I'll hold off.
Don't do it.
Stan, what's your overall thoughts on Selesnya Company? You crafted it, but it's not your favorite thing.
It's the first time I've truly regretted crafting something on Arena, because
no kidding,
it was crushing me. I do think it's great against Phoenix, and I think it's actually very good against Rogues. And I was just like, well, this deck seems unbeatable, and then I realized it was bad against everything else. And I just kept losing to Control.
It's good against Gruul, but I think Gruul's play rate is way down.
Yeah.
All right, next up, Jund Food, very Jundy, 22-21 or 51.4%. And then we have kind of what I was getting at before. These other decks like Mono Black Aggro and Dimir Rogues and Orzhov Auras are all like in the 48 to 53% range. They're not kind of getting too far ahead of the pack, but these are all options if you like playing them. If you don't have stuff to craft, just keep playing these. You're going to be fine. Our top 8, I'm just going to try to get through this really fast. Lucas Dusek on Jeskai Control in Historic. All the decks I'm going to read off are their Historic decks, but they did play Standard decks, of course. Arne Hushenbeth on Jund Food. Sam Beaulieu on Jund Food. Bernardo Torres on Is It Phoenix. Francisco Sanchez on Jeskai Control. Santi Delgado on Orzhov Auras, featuring Loris. Cesar Siokalin on Jeskai Turns. And Ray Sato on Is It Phoenix.
I think this is one of those tournaments where we can't necessarily focus too much on the historic deck selection in the top 8 specifically, because it being a dual format event.
Exactly.
Who knows?
I just wanted to I wanted to give these people their props for winning this, top 8ing this event.
Can't wait to see more from Insight Esports. Insight Esports, get at us. Let's talk. I want to know who's behind this organization. I don't even know if we know who's out there. Who is this? Do we know?
We've got communication methods on the internet. I think we can find this out.
Tweet us.
So quickly, I think the main thing I wanted to talk about here is kind of closing this out is that the players that are paying attention here to Historic are clearly coalescing around like 5 decks or so in Is It Phoenix, Jeskai Control, Jeskai Turns, Selesnya Company, and the old classic of Jund Food. I think this isn't great news for small creature decks right now. Like these are all decks that you are not really happy to see Yerizons Phoenix has so much just like, little removal in the shock effects or the what's that command?
Prismari
All
command?
these things. Yeah, Prismari command. Thank you. So all these decks, I think, are going to feast on things like Gruul aggro. They're going to feast on any kind of smaller creature deck besides maybe something like Rogues, because that offers some interaction, of course. But man, these decks are definitely, I think, fighting for the top spot in the meta right now. But we'll see.
Yeah, I was looking at the Lorehole deck. It's all mythics.
Sweet. That's actually great for Arena.
I know, right? It's a lot of mythics, so it's weirdly craftable, especially if you already have Jeskai control.
I don't know if I want to spend my time playing either one of those decks, but I will consider it.
Yeah. Well, that was fun. Good job, Shane.
I mean, I think Historic's in an interesting spot right now. I think we'll have to watch the next tournaments and the meta on ladder and things like that to see if Yerizons Phoenix is actually worthy of this quarter of the top meta spot. But I think it's time for me to sleeve this thing up digitally.
Well, it's going to have to start trying to beat people who are also playing Relic of Progenitus. And even though we just talked about how Graveyard Hate isn't the end-all be-all against Phoenix, Relic's still good. And who knows what else Historic Anthology 5 is going to do to the format. Maybe those Court Homunculus decks finally going to take over. But until then, let's take a quick break. And when we return, we're going to go over just a handful of Modern Horizon cards. The first batch we saw on Thursday of last week. Stay with us.
And we are back. And as Stan mentioned, Dive Down this week, we got a nice little preview of previews in the Modern Horizons 2 dump. They had a stream with the usual PR folks. And what was one a set designer on this, Stan? It sounded like there was a set designer and Blake, right?
Sure.
Yeah, why not? And so we wanted to do is, since the week after this and the following that, we will have so many cards to talk about that we can't really give each card talk about his card in as much depth as we will this week.
In fact, what you can look forward to, and longtime listeners might remember our coverage of Modern Horizons 1, we're going to go through every single card in Modern Horizons 2, full set review, 2 episodes. We will likely have a guest for 1 or 2 of those episodes, probably just 1. But we're going to be thorough, or, as thorough as a card deserves to be. If it's bad, we're going to call it that.
Yeah, but we'll
try to.
We're going to do a limited resources style review every card type.
Yeah.
Couple of shows.
All right, but since, like I said, we only have a few cards this week, we can go into more depth. And the first one I think requires a little conversation in depth, and that is Grief, a mythic at 2 black, an elemental incarnation. So all you incarnation tribal deck fans out there have something to add to it. It has Menace. When Grief ETBs, target opponent reveals their hand. You choose a non-land card from it. That player discards that card. Okay, that doesn't sound that great. Oh, wait, it has Evoke. Exile a black card from your hand. It's also a 3/2. So if you don't know what Evoke is, it's basically an alternate casting cost that gives you an effect, but then the creature itself is then sacrificed when it ETBs. So basically, you can cast Grief for its Evoke cost of exiling a black card from your hand. It ETBs. You get the reveal their hand, choose a non-land card, discard it thing, but then you have to put a sacrifice Grief trigger onto the stack as well. And that gives you some interesting options for doing something with Grief while the sacrifice trigger is on the stack.
Yeah. Now, before we get into everything you can do with this card, let's take a minute to go through the nostalgia lens for a second, because of course, Grief is an allusion to Unmask. That's right.
Yeah. By the way, I went back to Mercadian Masks. This Mercadian Masks has the best art. Like, why does Magic not look like Masks anymore? It is so good looking. Just an amazing set.
This is the set that made me quit playing Magic the first time, for the most part.
It's a weird set. It's like weird. When you look at, I'm just going to interrupt Dave. Dave, can I interrupt you?
You already have, so
Okay, yeah, you're right.
Well,
But,
didn't Dave originally interrupt Shane? We've got dreams within
Correct.
dreams of interruptions here.
Well, so Dave, I want you to actually go on beyond this, but one of the ideas of Mercadian Masks is that there's a bunch of alternate casting costs, right? And like there was different casting costs based on like a board state or like something that a land you controlled or something like that.
Yeah, I mean, Mercadian Mask was mostly Magic trying to step down after almost being destroyed by Urza's block. Like a lot of people have acknowledged that. There's a lot of super bad cards in it. And of course, for this era, there's also a few cards that are just really, really powerful somehow. Things like Rishadan Port, for example,
Gush.
which was, and Gush, which Rishadan Port was like it was like a $70 card in standard in like, 2001 or whenever Mercadian Mask came out. So it's
yeah, we're going to see a card that references that.
Yeah,
later.
maybe in a minute. Yeah. All right. So anyway, so this is Unmask on a staple to a creature, which of course is always like a fun, nostalgic thing. But whenever they staple a really good spell to a creature, there's things that happen as a result of that. And so what can you do when you evoke Grief, for example, especially since it doesn't cost any mana to do it?
Yeah, that's the thing. So here's kind of a very realistic scenario that everyone's talking about. Everyone is very much interested in this particular combo. So you could, the combo with Ephemerate, with evoking this creature. This is a very common deck building trope and strategy in Pauper. If you cast an evoke creature, if you cast a creature with evoke for its evoke cost, you put that sacrifice trigger on the stack and ephemerate it. Single white mana, instant speed, gets around that sacrifice effect and gets you Grief back on the battlefield with another ETB. And then, of course, Ephemerate rebounds on your next turn, which gives you another use of Grief at that point. So that means that on turn 1, you could effectively get 2 cards out of your opponent's hand. And then on your second turn, you get to do it again, getting another card out of their hand, which is very powerful. I mean, this got Ephemerate banned in Pauper, Mickey reminds me in chat.
Yeah, that's absurd.
And this is much better. This is much
absurd.
better than the combos that were being played. Like they were doing like Muldrifter combos or something like that.
Right.
Or what, like Mournwelk or something like that. Like where these evoke costs are 4 mana or 3 mana.
Right.
And this is 0 mana.
Yeah. So this is going to turn Grief and an Ephemerate and a black card from your hand into a creature and discard 3 cards. Is what you're telling me?
Yeah, I mean that's fully feasible.
Cool.
And it's not
Thanks.
too hard to imagine. Like especially because like it's a 3/2, which means if it's on your if your opponent goes first, right? And they happen to know what you're on or something like that, or maybe they're just holding up interaction, like they're holding up a lightning bolt or they're holding up a path to exile or something like that. They can interact with it on the like with Ephemerate and the trigger on the stack.
Of course.
Where
yeah.
You're not going to be able to target your Grief or something like that, right? But that's the best case scenario mentality here. The ceiling is quite high and very cheap, so it's not like it's absurd to imagine this happening.
Yeah, I mean, if you play this against a non-interactive deck, for example, in Modern, if you play this against Titan, let's say, like they can't interact with this combination game 1. Like you're just gonna do this and then take 3 cards from them, and you get to pick them. It's like it's 3 Thoughtseizes. Like that is wild.
Yeah, I mean, it's easy to sort of call it magical holiday land, right? But I think that there's enough people who like playing these style of decks. Hey, it's an inclusive podcast, Dan. Okay,
magical Hanukkah land, please.
There's people who like playing Ephemerate decks. There's people who are going to want to play this card. They're going to try to mess with this synergy. And this is one of those cards that, to me, for its face value, without Ephemerate, does not seem like a great card. I don't think this is like a playable Modern card. What do you think, Dave?
I mean, I think this kind of thing could be playable just because it's a 0 cost Thoughtseize. I mean, it costs 2 cards, but sometimes you really want to make sure you do that.
Yeah, like a combo deck, Living End or something.
You mull so hard in Modern sometimes that if you can, what if you do this and then Thoughtseize somebody on their first turn where they mulled to like Well, they mull to 5 or 6, and you just get their good cards right away.
You get their cathartic effect. You get the map. You get the Sylvan Scrying.
It puts them it puts you at a disadvantage too, like just card advantage wise. But like Modern isn't always built around card advantage. It's often built around synergy, and this could be really disruptive for that. I don't know. This does seem like it's a card that outside of just ephemerate shells, that might just be the thing that just abuse this card. There might be places just play this for more straight value.
Yeah, the potential concerns me. It's on my broken or useless poster board right now, but you might be right, Dave, that there's something in between.
I think this is just broken or value personally, but we'll see. Stan, you haven't had much to say about this. What do you think about this card?
I agree with everything you said.
Oh, great.
I'm just kind of reserving judgment. It looks like it's going to be a powerful cycle. It's easy to get, super zoned in on a single powerful card, but we're going to have a set full of powerful cards. So I'm trying to remain open-minded, and rather than think about it specifically as useless or broken, get excited about the potential and hope that there's other cards that are doing other crazy stuff for free. Thanks to Evoke or maybe other mechanics.
So what makes you excited about that? Because I think that the way that this cycle is going to work, I think that the cycle is going to be all Evoke.
The other masks cards.
Not necessarily. I think it's going to be all Evoke creatures that let you discard a card from your hand to do their come into play abilities. So it's going to be a bunch of Mull Drifters that let you discard to do it instead. So what are you excited about there? Do you think there's possible that there's one that's better than this? Do you think there's even ones that will be playable? Is the red one just going to be bad? Are they all going to be mythics? Like, what does this get you excited about?
It makes me think of the one colored, the 3 mana cards from Modern Horizons 1, like Seasoned Pyromancer and Ranger Captain of Eos.
Mm-hmm.
I honestly don't remember if there were cards in other colors, if that was a cycle, just because those two are the ones that continue to see play. I kind of think there weren't, but maybe there were. Doesn't matter. It's just fun. I think free spells are fun, and exploring that territory and looking for ways to abuse that is what Modern is partially about, right? That's the sort of thing I want to explore and experiment with in this format, because we don't get to do that in other formats. And that's one of the things that I think makes it unique. And if we're going to explore that design space, whether or not those cards are as powerful as this one, that doesn't matter to me. I'm just excited for the potential for now. And this, I agree, this looks good. Whether or not you're always going to have Ephemerate is unlikely. Whether or not it's going to want to be in a deck with Ephemerate that can actually utilize that blink ability on anything else also remains to be seen. But
yeah,
let's see what happens.
I think you made a really great point just now, though, Stan, where you said free spells are fun, and Modern is the only place where you get to. They're fun to play. They're terrifying for balance, but Modern is the only place where we're going to explore that space right now, most likely, right? Like, it's really unlikely that this kind of stuff is going to come up too frequently in Standard or Historic or Pioneer. Maybe Historic. We'll see. You never know what's going to pop up in Anthology. But yeah, so I like that take, that we should be excited about this because this is a space that's unique to Modern. Now, what I think about here is, like, I saw somebody talking about, it might have been Saffron Olive on Twitter, talking about the red one. Like, what if the red one destroyed a non-basic land? Like, is that too powerful for a free card? Like, what's the design space that red has?
It's going to be the mask spells. It's going to be the mask spells. I will give you 5. What
are the mask spells?
Okay, so
it can't be all of them, can it?
The white, well, no, I mean the mask, the cycle of exile a card of the same color.
It's going to be all the same as those 5.
So the white one. I mean, they're very well balanced for Modern. Like, and also bad in the colors you expect them to be. Like, white is Reverent Mantra. It's an instant that you could exile a white card and give your creatures protection from a chosen color until end of turn. Blues is Misdirection. It changes the color changes the target of a spell.
It's Misdirection. Okay.
Yeah. So I think that there's that would not surprise me fully if they were just straight up creatures with the Marcadian masks, like rare exile effect cycle.
Okay. I don't think there's a reason for them to be exactly those, but maybe.
Well, I think they're clearly they're referencing Mercadian masks already in a few cards. I wouldn't be surprised if they kind of lean in pretty hard on that, unless the spell is bad.
Because everyone is here for Mercadian masks nostalgia. This card's good.
This card's good. I mean, this card has, I think, provoked the most conversation in the community. So I think it's good that we gave it this much time. I think the rest of the cards are nowhere near as interesting, unfortunately. Besides maybe one. Stan, what's next?
It's a reprint, a new to modern card. It's a land. It's called Cabal Coffers. You can pay 2 and tap it, 2 colorless, tap it, and add 1 black mana for each swamp you control. And that's it.
Real quick.
What's up, Dave?
Is pre-selling on Card Kingdom right now for $199, but it is marked out of stock. So I don't think they have this stuff worked out yet. Anyway,
look at TCG next.
Cabal Coffers.
Yeah, this is like a really popular commander card, right? Like it's like a $70 card, $75 card, something like that.
This was a hugely powerful card, of course, when it existed in Standard, in Torment.
Yeah.
This was a card that I remember being like, they did what now?
There are some drawbacks to this card, right? Like Stan mentioned.
There?
Yeah, there's 1 or 2. It makes no mana by itself.
Okay.
It in fact requires at least 2 other mana sources to make any mana at all. And even if you have 2 other lands and they're both swamp types, it only makes 2 mana out of 3 lands. So it doesn't do anything by itself.
I love that you think these are drawbacks.
What? A land making no mana? That seems very bad.
But then in other scenarios, this is a land that makes, 6 mana for 3, and then you get to ramp in black. Like,
yeah, but what you kill one? So I'm not saying that there needs to be a deck that exists in Modern to make use of this. I don't think there's any great mono black decks that I'm thinking of. Is this good enough to make a deck built around it? Like the ostensible use here is what like a mono black or like some kind of rampy deck where you also can run a bunch of swampland types and then be able to take advantage of that late game. So it's worthless early and high value late in a format with tons of land destruction.
Yeah, but you run this with Urborg and suddenly it taps for mana itself, right?
Sure.
And then Urborg taps for mana, and then you got to figure out what you're going to do with like a mono black control deck of some kind. Generally is what this card is for. I don't think there's like a combo out with this, but like, what if this is a card that's just supposed to ramp you to like Grizzlebrand early, where you just hard cast Grizzlebrand and do good stuff with it? Like this is a powerful card. I mean, I'm not a brewer who's going to be able to tell you all the ins and outs of this, but like this was a card that I was surprised to see pop up in the set as one of the cards they decided that it was okay to put into Modern.
This is really a commander plant to sell more packs. IMO. I do not think this sniffs legitimate Modern play, but I'm fine being wrong, as I always say.
Yeah, I'm looking at who plays it in Legacy, and like it'll pop up in decks with crop rotation. So I think
it's like literally no play in any format but commander. I looked, almost none.
I mean, I'm looking at MTG Top 8 last year, Legacy tournament, came in first place in a Nick Fit deck. But I think what you want is the ability to actually manipulate your lands. Like I don't think you just play this with a bunch of swamps. I think you play this with like maybe a Sylvan Scrying or a map effect to actually get specific lands, maybe Abundant Harvest. I don't know.
How about Elvish Reclaimer?
Or Elvish Reclaimer, yeah. I think like you could maybe put together a lands deck that uses this to cast Tron pieces or, other ramp targets.
Yeah. I mean, I just think this is a powerful card. And I guess we'll see where it goes. I definitely think it's also a commander plant, though, to help sell more packs. Like, I think multiple things can be true. I don't think this is a card that's going to break Modern. Like, it's not outwardly powerful in Modern, but I think it's a cool and interesting piece to have access to for a bunch of decks that I would never play. Like, I don't see myself playing any of the decks that this ends up in, but we'll see what happens.
Next card.
Yo, it's
now we're scraping.
Is it?
Aye.
It's Yusri, Fortune's Flame, 1 blue-red for a legendary Ifrit. It's a 2/3 flyer, and whenever it attacks, choose a number between 1 and 5. Your 2s, your 3s, your 4s, your 1s and 5s as well. You flip that many coins, and for each...
At once, you have to.
With all 5 fingers. You draw... For each flip you win, you draw a card. That seems good. For each flip you lose, it deals 2 damage to you. That seems bad. If you won 5 flips this way, you may cast spells from your hand this turn without paying their mana cost. That seems good. It's also
Yeah,
your buy a box
seems great.
promo. That seems no, it's your bundle promo. If you buy a 10-pack bundle, you get one of these for free.
Whoa, have they done that before? Bundle promos?
I don't remember that.
But
I noticed that Chicagoland Games / the Dice Dojo was selling bundles though.
Yeah.
So that's cool to see.
Yeah, so you can
Yeah,
get
the new fat packs.
a guaranteed Yusri Fortune's Flame, Dave.
Yeah, I'm thrilled for that. I mean, I don't know. I've never got a bundle, so I haven't heard of that before. But anyway, I don't know if this card is good. I don't know. Like, I like Afrits. One of my favorite cards. Seriously, one of my favorite cards from my original tour through Magic was Frenetic Afrit, which is also one UR. That's a coin flip card as well. I just don't know if there's a way to play this card for value in a way that you really want to do it.
I think a good rule of thumb for competitive Modern is that if you need Krark's Thumb to be good, don't go down that road.
Well, I think having the uncertainty of there's already enough uncertainty built into Magic. So having a card that adds more uncertainty to it when it comes into play is sketchy, you know?
Yeah, I'm uncertain when anyone would play this card. Looks bad. The math is bad, right? And it's like, it doesn't do anything on ETB. It has no haste.
Mhm.
Like, this is the rare I'm going to open like 7 of.
Oh, for
in
sure.
My one box, right?
For sure. I mean, I do think that there maybe maybe there's a world where, I mean, let's think about like, what's the best case scenario for this? Not best case scenario. Like, if we're trying to use all the pieces of the Buffalo, right? Like,
Yeah.
would we ever play this card in like Shadow, where we're like okay with taking damage sometimes and okay with not taking damage sometimes? Like, that doesn't seem like a total fit. I wonder if when you play this card, you really choose 2 and just are okay with drawing something between, taking 25% chance of drawing a card and taking damage. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah,
it's basically 50% chance of taking a card and taking damage, drawing 2 cards or taking 4 damage, and like just being like, that's fine. But even that doesn't seem powerful enough for Modern. If it had haste, it would be like, okay, I might give this a shot because I can try to attack and divination off of it on the same turn.
That's the thing that seems weird is like, I feel like this would be Modern Horizons power level with haste, and without haste, it's really bad. Like, it would be like an interesting effect that probably wouldn't even be that good with haste. And I think without it, it's nigh unplayable.
Yeah. When I read this card, I was like, ooh, and is it rare? But I was pretty turned off pretty fast. But I don't know, maybe. I mean, I know there's some people in the Slack who were pretty excited about it. We'll see what happens.
Here's another blast from the past. It's Flametongue Yearling.
Are you even allowed to read this card, Stan? Isn't this much before both of your and my times?
This was around when I first learned to play Magic. But Dave, you do have a silkier voice. I'd love to hear you pronounce the name of the card.
Read Flametongue Yearling. It's a Kavu. Everybody loves Flametongue Kavu. Limited all-star archetypical card within limited format. This riff on it is Multi-Kicker 2, and it says Flametongue Yearling enters the battlefield with a 1/1 counter on it for each time it was kicked. +1/+1 counter, that is. When Flametongue Yearling enters the battlefield, it deals damage equal to its power to target creature.
Cool. I think Flametongue Kavu is better.
I mean, well, hold on. Let's explain what Flametongue Kavu is.
So Flametongue Kavu is what, 3 generic and a red for a 4/2 that does 4 damage to something when it comes into play.
It's like one of the original 1/8/7 creatures, which is like
it's not at all.
Well, no, what? It's one of the more like what's like a Necrotal type.
It's
thing,
one of the best ones, but it's not one of the original ones. It's from a later set.
Well, okay. Hold on.
Necrotal,
what I mean, Dave,
and
thank
Mana
you, Dave.
War,
Thanks,
the first
Dave.
ones. Hey, come
I
on.
understand.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, I did say original. What I meant is like the prototypical.
Yeah.
Like the one that people know about, the one that like everyone has in their cube, the one that everyone knows about playing in limited.
Yeah.
Because it's very good at what it does.
Yep.
Anyway, it's a 3 and a red for a 4/2 deals 4 damage.
Mm-hmm.
This is a lot. This is pretty safe. Like that multi-kicker is very safe, isn't it? Like you have to pay 2 to make it into a 3/2. So it's like a 4 mana 3/2 that deals 3 damage. And that's like fine for limited, but I don't really see. I'm sorry for being so negative in this episode, but I don't really see where this goes. I don't see what home this has in Modern right now.
Is it Ponza? I doubt it.
I don't know. I look at this and go, is there a little potential? But I guess it doesn't scale fast enough. You know what I mean?
Yeah, it's a very safe scaling effect. Like paying 2 for that multi-kicker is brutal.
Yeah, I do not like that if you're paying the Flametongue Kavu cost, it's not even as good as that. I do think that being able to pick off creatures is interesting, but the fact that it's like a Kavu and it's not a necessarily meaningful creature type either, I think kind of is points against it.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's fine to spoil this card as a, hey, we're going to be doing more throwbacks. Here's a cool throwback. You're going to love playing this in limited. Enjoy. It doesn't have to be a constructed playable card. Modern Horizons 2 is as many things for as many players as possible.
I love that.
Cool.
I love that take. In fact, let's stop talking about it.
Yep. Up next, we have a mythic Thrasta, Tempest's Roar. It's 10 green. That doesn't seem modern playable for a legendary dinosaur. It costs 3 generic mana less, colorless mana. Yes, colorless. No, generic. 3 generic mana less to cast for each other spell cast this turn. It also has trample and haste and tramples over planeswalkers. My new favorite. I guess that's a keywords. It can deal excess combat damage to the controller of the planeswalker it's attacking. So if you attack some stupid Jace and deal 4 damage to it, and you attacked for 7, then you can deal 3 to its controller. So cool. Also, more keyword soup. Thrasta Tempest Roar has hexproof as long as it entered the battlefield this turn, so it has single turn hexproof. It is a 7/7. All right, this is like the true broken or useless card, right? Like,
oh yeah.
Let's do some math here. For this to be better than some other like huge trampling haster with other keywords that are that exist out there, this has to cost what? Like 4 green at the absolute most, right? Which is 2 spells being cast before it that turn, and still having 4 green left around to cast it. Like the floor seems dangerous in modern, right? Like it doesn't. I mean, the floor is really bad. Like the floor is quite bad.
And when you're talking about the floor, you just mean the floor is it's 12 mana.
It's a 10. The floor is that's a 12 mana card.
Yeah.
That's a 7/7 kind of just haster green thing that we've done a million times. It's not like it even has like can't be countered, anything like that. I really don't. I don't know where this goes in modern, because how are you going to have that much mana? How are you going to be able to cast 2 spells reliably?
So, okay, here's one thing. I think we need to be careful, and I'm speaking to myself as much as I am to Shane. We can't only judge cards by where they go in today's modern.
Okay, well, like where would they go? Not necessarily, does this fit into Primeval Titan decks? It's more like, how would you build a deck to support this card? And I don't know.
I think that you are missing this card the same way you missed on Stormwing Entity. 100%. Shay just lifted up his glasses.
So you cast a single Metamorphose.
Yeah, and then cast this, and it's great.
Yeah.
No, I look, I think that let's talk about a card that's underplayed in modern right now. And that card is Burning Tree Emissary.
Okay.
And so if you put this in a deck with Burning Tree Emissary, Metamorphose, Gut Shot, some of your other friendly cheap
Bauble,
Mental Misstep,
Bauble, you can't
Probe.
You can't play Mutagenic Growth in this one. You can, I guess, but it won't get the bonus as much. But I think you put this with Swift Spear and those kind of things and try like a red-green prowess-esque kind of build and see what happens. I think it's totally on the menu. Like, this card is not that hard to get out on turn 4. It's not that hard to get out on turn 3.
This is what people said about Chandra's Incinerator, though. And like Chandra's Incinerator went nowhere fast.
Yeah, this is better than Chandra's Incinerator.
Right, because Chandra's Incinerator expects you to play a specific kind of spell. Like, it wants you to play burn spells. This counts for any spell.
Yeah, so you can play Bauble, Burning Tree Emissary, and Metamorphose. That's 12 cards in your deck that help combine this whole thing. One that draws a card, the other one draws a card on a future turn. So I think there's a lot going on here with being able to use this.
Dave. Bauble, Burning Tree Emissary, Metamorphose, and this is a 3-drop.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, that's something. I mean, that's like, we're talking about Phoenix type of how easy it was to get Phoenixes out of the yard that people didn't see at first when Guilds of Ravnica was spoiled. And it's
and I don't think it's a guarantee. Yeah. And I don't think it's a guarantee, to be clear, Shane, but I do think that this is the type of card where you're like, this is a synergy card. I think that it having haste and having hexproof the turn it comes into play is a huge deal.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's like a closer for some kind of weird, maybe bushwhacker deck, or I don't even know what all the possibilities are, but there are 12 cards that help power this out for sure that are good playable cards in Modern.
Well, I mean, hey, you know that I would love to cast this card.
No,
you know that I would love this card to be good.
This is not a card for you.
Why would I not like this card?
Because you don't like prowess already. You don't like these types of cards already. Like,
here's why I don't like this card is because I don't want to have to. It's like, is the juice in the squeeze? Is the juice worth the squeeze on this card? It's like do I want to have a 10 green top deck? You know what I mean? But at the same time, do you want to have a Storming Entity top deck? And it's a lot easier to cast a Storming Entity naturally than it is to cast this.
Yeah, true. Yeah, Storming Entity is way, way, way better fail case than this. So maybe it's not in a deck where you play the full play set of these, but maybe we're going somewhere else where there's a like big prowess shell or big spells matter shell with creature payoffs that happens. And I think this card is a part of that whole thing. One thing I would say about this card too to keep in mind is it doesn't die to Fatal Push.
It does not.
Doesn't die to Skyclave Apparition, both of which are things that are important about Storming Entity as well.
Doesn't die to Dismember.
Oh, yeah, and then it doesn't die to Dismember. That's true. That's giant as well. So
I mean, can we also just appreciate Trample Over Planeswalkers as like the coolest line of text on a card in a long time?
We can and will.
But this is a card for me, and I'm sorry that I had to leave the room for a minute and come back in the middle of Shane being like, but what's the floor of this card?
Thank you, Dave.
The floor
That's
is
a good impression.
The floor is not great, but this card is sweet.
It's a sweet card.
Yeah.
Sweet card.
Next card.
Unmarked Grave. It's a rare 1 in the black sorcery. Search your library for a non-legendary card, put that card into your graveyard, then shuffle. Notice that that's the new way that they say shuffle your library. I like it. It's very clean. Mm-hmm. Just clean that up. Only the legendary have names on the gravestone, I guess, which I think is interesting flavor. The non-legendary have the Unmarked Grave. Dave, is this an Entomb effect?
Yeah.
Did I get that right?
That's what I would call this. Yeah.
Yay.
Good job.
Entomb effect. The only Entomb effect, well, one of the only cheap Entomb effects in Modern, right?
I think it's literally the only one. I don't think there's very many other ones at all, right?
I don't know.
There's almost nothing that searches stuff in your graveyard that people play. And
searches stuff and then puts it in your graveyard, you mean?
Yeah, I mean, search for stuff put in your graveyard that people try to play. And, it's part of it's because Entomb is such a good card because it incentivizes Reanimator so much.
Sure. So they kind of put a little bit of a shield in there because a lot of the stuff you want to reanimate is legendary, right?
Yeah. Although I just realized I've read this card like 10 times and I just realized that it is non-legendary card and not non-legendary creature. That was very surprising to me.
Yeah. Well, what? That it says card or creature?
That it says card and not creature, because that does open up a possibility to use this as kind of a toolbox and like an artifact style deck or other things that I hadn't thought about too much yet.
Yeah. I feel like the fact that it's a non-legendary protects us a little bit. And I think that's the kind of thing where it's like, we know what some of the most broken stuff to put into your graveyard is. So let's try to, protect ourselves from that.
Yeah. I'm sure that there's a list of targets out there somewhere that's like the top of the line. But this card seems reasonably good to me. It's probably a new style of deck to Modern that we don't really have at the moment. But
I mean, it's so much safer than Entomb. Like Entomb's instant, single black mana. This is sorcery speed, 1 in the black, non-legendary card. So it's definitely different, and they're definitely sort of making it cost in a manner that is going to make it a lot harder to be broken or even abused.
Yeah.
Maybe get a Skelemental with this thing. I don't know.
I mean, how many of these things are you, for example, in a theoretical deck that used this card? I mean, would this be a one of in a deck where you're running a bunch of Unearths and a bunch of 3-drops and you're just kind of like occasionally you bring this up to be able to toolbox your way through the end of it? It's kind of like a mini Court of Calling thing.
Claim to Fame.
Yeah. You play it with Claim Fame occasionally. Like,
you could also maybe play it in a Lurrus deck, just like to tutor stuff for Luris to draw.
This is all one deck, right? I mean, a deck that plays Unearth, Claim Fame, and Luris, and Unmarked Grave. Maybe it's Arcanist. I don't know. It seems like reasonable to have around.
Shane, does it dredge?
No, it does not dredge.
You wouldn't know. Yeah, this doesn't put enough cards in to be able to really get you going.
But it could put a dredger in your art.
Yeah, but I mean, if I'm not running this card to put a single dredger in my graveyard, is like, man, I really hope I can get one dredger in my graveyard type thing to start a chain.
Yeah, I mean, it wouldn't be enough to just
draw.
To just go get Stinkweed Imp. Be like, you're sure you're always going to have the one that dredges 5.
Yeah, just not a chance. Not a chance this gets dredged.
Yeah, I think this is for other stuff, but
all right, here's one we alluded to earlier. It's a new card. It's called Rishadan Dockhand.
Rishadan.
Yeah.
Thank you. I could hear myself mispronouncing it.
That's okay.
It's a creature merfolk, single blue mana for a 1/2. It has Island Walk, and it also has 1 tap target land.
I told you, and I've said many times how much I hate Rishadan Port, right? Like, it's one of my least favorite cards.
Just because it's so disruptive.
I mean, it was a confluence of all the things. It was the best card in a bad set. It was a crazy expensive rare in standard. It led to really unfun games. And now it's $1 zillion, or it was $1 zillion. It's less now that's been reprinted a little bit, but I don't really know what to think about this card. This just seems like a fun card for limited to me, I guess. But then I saw it was a rare, which made me think a little bit that they might think it's good.
It's an interesting way for merfolk to interact on another level.
It's a mana denial strategy for merfolk, kind of.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's like a more part of the spreading seas thing. Like it's I think it's cool for merfolk because merfolk was clearly, as we remember in our testing, cool but not busted. So this gives, I think, merfolk, which doesn't have a great amount of 1-drops in the mono blue version either, gives merfolk a useful 1-drop that adds to the disruptive package and also can be pumped with lords and get through with the island walk and be part of like a spreading seas, tap down their mana type thing. I think it gives merfolk another tool for the toolbox, and why not? It isn't like merfolk has gotten amazing in the past 5 years.
Love it. Let's hope it works.
Yeah. Other than that, pass. Thanks for the nostalgia, but no thanks.
Dave, what's this next card?
Next card, Profane Tutor. Profane Tutor has the best art I've seen in the set so far, if I'm going to be honest.
So good.
Because it's Richard Kane Ferguson, which is, this really just looks like a card from Mirage to me, which I feel like was part of the time that he was very, very into it. He was very into Magic, at least. So Profane Tutor is a suspend 2 sorcery for a generic and a black. Search your library for a card, put that card into your hand, then shuffle. So it is Demonic Tutor with suspend. But yeah, I don't know. I don't know about this card. I don't think
just
this
like
card,
that As Foretold is like $22.
Oh, did it cause As Foretold to spike?
Yeah, I spiked again. I think there was a rumor that there was gonna be suspend in the set, and As Foretold had a little bit of bump. And then now that we know it's suspend and a card as good as Profane Tutor, it's gonna be in the set. As Foretold has continued to spike.
Yeah. I don't know. It's so tough for me these days. Like, we were just talking about how Unmarked Grave was maybe okay and it costs 2 mana, but contorting yourself so hard to get a Demonic Tutor effect is like kind of weird to me. And I guess the difference to me between Unmarked Grave and Profane Tutor, for example, or a Demonic Tutor effect is that, a card that you get into your hand, you generally still have to pay some kind of mana cost to go with it. Now, As Foretold, helps you cheat with that kind of stuff, but that's the setup cost of cheating. In Unmarked Grave, a lot of times you're going to end up with a card like that in a deck that's full of synergies meant to take advantage of the graveyard. So the graveyard's almost a better place for a card to go to than your hand is. Sometimes, I don't know, like this card I thought was sweet, but I was kind of like, I don't know if it's really going to get there.
Do you play tutors for value? I feel like tutors, you only use them to set something up.
So in like, let's talk about like in older formats, I think back in the day, you could play a tutor for value, I guess is what I should say. You don't really see it. I don't feel like you see it too much these days in older formats, but now I think you really play tutors for combo pieces more than anything else, or like a really specific payoff or card.
Yeah. But I also wonder if part of that's because our tutors aren't that good.
See, I think that the thing is, when you have a deck that is full of absolute all-time, all-powerful cards, a tutor gets better. But in a deck where you can't run, like the card quality isn't everything is broken all the time, then they're less powerful. And so that's why they end up in synergy strategies instead of just value strategies a lot. But I don't know. I mean, I want this card to be interesting.
Yeah.
I just don't think it is.
I wonder if it's going into a theoretical As Foretold deck and you can use it to maybe cast more free spells off of As Foretold, if that's where it gets interesting. And potentially pairing it with more other suspend cards, like whether it's rhinos, whether it's
that's how I see this working.
Yeah.
Like if this is in an As Foretold, like suspend cheaty style deck, then you get the ability, like you said, Stan, which is like you get redundant copies of your other spells, right? And those can you get sort of the rule of 8 of a number of cards, simply because Profane Tutor becomes just a copy of those that can be any number of things, which is really nice to have the ability to do so. I think it's going to be part of decks that want to do that, and their power has always definitely been on the bubble. And we'll see if this or other cards that maybe have the suspend keyword or mechanic rather will get there.
Mm-hmm.
Want to talk about some bad cards?
Are they bad?
I don't know. I don't think they're good.
Okay.
But I think most of these cards are bad, and I've been a negative Shane this episode more than usual. So Timeless Dragon is a rare 3 white for a flying creature dragon, 5/5. It has plane cycling for 2 generic mana. You can pay 2 to discard Timeless Dragon. You then search your library for a planes card, reveal it, put it in your hand, and then shuffle. You then also can eternalize this card for 2 white, which makes you exile that card from your graveyard. You create a token copy of it, except it's a 4/4 black zombie dragon with no mana cost, eternalized only as a sorcery. So basically what you get to create the ice dragon from Game of Thrones instead of the good dragon that Daenerys is riding, right?
Have I ever told you guys how much I hate Eternalize as a mechanic? I hate Eternalize. I hate that it makes everything a 4/4. I just think it's so weird and counterintuitive that it does that.
Yeah, like turning your 1/1 cat into like a 4/4 cat that costs like 5 to eternalize or something.
Yeah, or your 5/5 into a 4/4, and so you have to remember that it's a 4/4. And I hate Eternalize. I think it was like a medium executed. It was okay in Amonkhet Limited, but I think for Constructed it's so annoying. Yeah, I don't know what to think of this card. I guess maybe this is a bad card. I'm kind of 50-50 on it. I think it's cute that it has an onboard graveyard mechanic with a mechanic that puts it into the graveyard. Like that's cute. I wonder how many cards we're going to see Eternalize on. It feels like probably not many, but what do you think, Stan?
I don't think it's going to see a ton of constructed play, though it is an interesting potential control finisher. You know what I mean? Where you use it to get a land early, and then you have like a 4/4 beater. And then if you top deck it late, you have a 5/5 beater. And I think that's interesting.
I mean, really, you have two beaters if you top deck it late, right? And the cost isn't that high.
Right. Yeah. Like it's within the casting cost of something a control deck could do. Yeah. As a late game finisher, potentially.
Yeah. But it just doesn't seem of a power level for Modern to me. Like this seems like a really good limited card to me. Like I'll be excited to have this in my sealed deck or something.
We're gonna do sealed. We're gonna do pre-release, Dave. Do some pre.
I guess. I mean, not around Chicago, but we'll see. We'll see. Maybe I'll try it out. People loved MH1 Limited. I didn't play a single match of MH1 Limited.
I did not either.
I did a few times and it was great. So let that sink in.
Yeah.
Well, I read this final card. It's Dakkon, Shadow Slayer. It's a mythic. Costs white, blue, black.
Is that Esper?
That's an Esper 3-mana walker. Comes down with 0 loyalty counters. Dies on the spot. GG. Oh, there's more abilities. I'm sorry. When Dakkon enters the battlefield, it comes down with a number of loyalty counters equal to the number of lands you control. So on turn 3, it comes down with, at least 3 lands. Or at least 3 loyalty. +1 is Surveil 2. -3 is exile target creature, and then -6, you may put an artifact card from your hand or graveyard onto the battlefield. I think this card is sick. And I'm worried it's just going to end up like Sarah Ascendant or Sarah Angel, the bad White Walker from Modern Horizons 1. But I feel like this one has so much more utility. Just the fact that it filters your draws, it can answer other creatures. It can maybe set up like a really powerful target for Stoneforge Mystic, and it scales throughout the game. So you don't have to cast it on turn 3. You can cast it later, and it ends up being a lot bigger. I think it's pretty cool design.
Yeah, I agree. I was talking with some of the people in the Slack about this card, and I was trying to brainstorm like what a cool artifact to bring back from the graveyard of the battlefield would be once you get to a point where you can make it big enough. I don't know what that card is necessarily, but I think there's cool cards, cool things to do with this card. I think this is is this the first Esper Planeswalker? Is it one of the first ones?
There's one in Commander.
Mm.
That was like a Commander precon.
Yeah. Yeah, I feel kind of like medium on how good this could be and constructed in Modern itself. It does. This one feels a little bit more like a Commander plant to me in some ways, but I also don't play a lot of Commanders, so I can't really talk too much about it. But I would love to see like a fun artifact reanimation strategy that goes with this. But it feels like the stuff that you can do to reanimate artifacts right now is so hyper powered because of like Emery and stuff like that I don't know if this kind of runs in the same circle as a card like Emery does, honestly.
So it doesn't get it from your library, but it can cheat something from your hand.
Right.
So maybe there's some kind of synergy where you can fetch an artifact or something else. I think what we're really asking is what's the most value we can get out of that ability that isn't worth spending mana on?
Yeah. So my first card that I thought of here was Blightsteel Colossus, which just used to be like an old card that people would try to cheat into play. But, I don't know if that's really the type of thing we want to do right now. And, people in Slack pointed out to me that Through the Breach is maybe just better in that kind of scenario anyway. So why wouldn't you just play like a Breach deck? So I don't know. This card is sweet. I like the way that it gets its loyalty. I like that it's 3 CMC. It's fun that it has Surveil, which synergizes with its -6, but a little bit of a head scratcher for me as to like where it goes and if it's really brew-aroundable in a way that like Urza turned out to be brew-aroundable.
Yeah, that's this is the type of planeswalker that I think people have been saying, hey, if you're going to make 2 mana, 3 mana planeswalkers, make them go only into certain strategies and into certain ideas. And this is exactly what this kind of card is. And hopefully it does something neat without being Urza level power and bustedness.
Yeah.
We do have both Blightsteel and Darksteel Colossi. They don't see Modern play anymore, but I think those are beloved cards. So maybe that was perhaps like some of the design thinking is how do we get some of these old favorite staples back into this format where they're legal and just don't see any play?
Yeah. I mean, one thing that would have made this card, of course, more powerful is if it was like, you may put an artifact card from your hand to graveyard into the battlefield. It gains haste until, it gains haste or whatever, like would make this a lot more threatening as a threat on its own, but it might also make it a little too good because you could just drop it on turn 6, but I don't know.
And looking at the difference between Blightsteel and Darksteel, it looks like you're never using it for Darksteel.
Yeah, because you can't do it.
Well, no, just because Blightsteel is just a better card. They're both indestructible, except Blight has Trample and Infect on an 11/11, and they both have that Emrakul effect, whereas if it were to go into the graveyard from anywhere, you shuffle it back into your library.
Yeah, so you literally cannot reanimate it.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's the problem.
I think you'd have to get it from your hand out.
Yeah. Cool.
All right, fine. So you can't use Unmarked Grave with this and then put it in the graveyard and then Dakkon Blackblade it. So that's not happening.
Maybe you're getting Reaper King. And then you're playing a bunch of shapeshifters.
Maybe you're getting like a really cool vehicle. Just get a big old vehicle. Get a chariot of some kind. I mean,
is this a card that goes with Unmarked Grave though? Like, is this like what you're doing? So that you could go and get like your Karn type silver bullets or something? I don't know.
Maybe in your really good sealed pool, Dave.
Perfect.
Pull that off.
I got them all together. But this card, cool flavor, more of a head scratcher.
Yeah.
Yeah. I guess the last thing they spoiled for us too is that there will be some old border Modern Horizons 1 reprints that are almost not worth us talking about because they're only going to be in the collector's boosters, I believe, which is a sad thing. And they're only going to be foil. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's
That's
my understanding.
So they're basically not going to impact the cost of Modern Horizons cards. I think it's going to be like 40 or 42 or something like that.
Yeah.
Of them. So it's bad news financially. Force of Negation will continue to be an expensive card. Sorry, I sold them all.
And I don't think the big thing here too is not necessarily for paper play, honestly, because they're expensive cards in paper, but they're not absurdly expensive like they are on Magic Online. And that's what I think people were really hoping for some relief from, was being able to have these in the normal packs on Magic Online so that Force of Negation on Moto would become cheaper. And that's not going to happen at all as a result of this. So I'm just going to ignore this. I don't care about foils. I like the old border frame, but I don't really care about it. And I'm not going to open collector boosters of premium product. Like, no way.
In before Dave literally does this and texts us on his drive home from a store and says, guys, I bought a box of collector boosters.
You know that I buy boxes of cards, like on impulse. Sometimes I'll go and buy a box of cards. I will not impulse buy a box of collector boosters. No way I'm going to spend $400 or whatever it is for a box of collector boosters on impulse.
What if you suddenly come into a lot of extra money though?
I hate foils is the problem. Like, I really don't like foils. I like
them. But they have the little star flourish at the bottom.
Yeah, I know. They're nice, but no way.
All right, let's take a quick break and let's wind down with some listener questions. We got a bunch of great ones, including one from a fellow podcast host. I'm excited to kick off with that one. We'll be right back. Stay with us. All right, we haven't done these in a long time. I'm excited to get through some listener questions. Let's try to get through as many as we can because we got a bunch of great ones. And as I mentioned, one came from a fellow podcast host, the one and only Cave Dan, CEO of Faithless Brewing Industries, asked us a question about Modern Horizons 2. He writes, my friend is convinced that Modern Horizons 2 is a, quote, cash grab. A critique he also aims Secret Lair and the like. Mm-hmm. Is Cave Dan's friend right? And also, what does cash grab mean anymore given the current shape of Magic the Gathering? Shane, given your current mood, how do you feel about the cash grabbiness of Wizards and Modern Horizons 2?
That's capitalism, baby.
Yeah.
This is Magic is as a cash grab from WotC by making stuff that people find interesting in a continual fashion that keeps us all engaged in the game and wanting to participate in it, which requires us to purchase new product in order to stay up to date with relevant decks, trends, and strategies in Modern, Pioneer, and Historic. I mean, what? Like, the fact that it requires effort to make it. Like, a Secret Lair requires, I think, a lot less effort. And I'm not trying to put down the artists that make the art and all that kind of cool stuff. Like, that's a lot of effort. But the effort into a full Modern Horizons set with new art, with a limited environment built around it, with all that kind of stuff is more effort than a Secret Lair. You could say maybe a Secret Lair is just a cash grab because it's just new art on some product that is limited. Modern Horizons 2 is a full-fledged set that required a ton of effort to make and think about and integrate and test, and therefore I think is worth paying for.
Yeah, I mean, think about all the look, I'm not trying to defend. Look, these are all cash grabs. Okay. Wizards is trying to figure out how to make the most money in some sense with the least amount of effort, let's say. And that's not a knock on them. You know, what they're trying to do is go like, hey, what's the thing that we do the best that people get excited about? And how can we do more of that across more ways to get more people excited about it? It's just how product design works. Right. And
yeah,
I mean, think about the entertainment value that we get out of Modern Horizons 2 and all the time that they put into it. Like, we have spoiler seasons. We get to talk about it on the show. We get to listen to podcasts. We get to talk to each other about it. We get to buy the cards. We get to be excited about the cards. We get to open the packs and we get to play with the cards. None of that's to say, like, again, I'm not trying to defend them for being like, we need to make more money out of these widgets, but like, there are worse widgets they could make. They could make us buy freaking Walking Dead secret layers and make them legal in Modern. They have not done that yet, because I think that was the worst cash grab that they've had so far, and hopefully nothing of that ever touches Modern. But this is pretty inoffensive to me in that sense.
We don't know what Dan's friend is thinking. I wonder if
Dan Cave, his friend Dan Cave.
Yeah, I wonder if that's code for Dan himself. Sure, your friend, right? I wonder if there's this connotation when people refer to cash grabs that it suggests that it's at the expense of something else, like at the expense of format quality. And I think,
or low effort, high cost, or something like that.
Right. And I think for Modern players, we still remember what happened after Modern Horizons 1, especially immediately after with Hogak. And I think that's something people are rightfully afraid of. And I think that's something that Wizards and its designers have tried to calm our nerves a little bit, and indicated how much more testing and care went into designing the set. But do you think it's fair to be worried about something like that, which is like premium price set? They're willing to keep pushing boundaries, print breakable stuff, and then, maybe people do buy cards that end up being literally useless and unplayable because they're banned in a format. Doesn't that feel like a cash grab that's a little bit less palatable?
But that's not a cash grab. That's a mistake.
No,
I don't think that they set out going, we're going to break Modern and make people spend money on cards they're not going to be able to play 6 weeks from now. I think what they do is they try to make stuff that they think is, I think they have the best intentions as far as a cash grab can go. I don't think that they mean to actually make people waste money on unfun experiences. That's a bad scenario for them.
And look, they didn't have to put the fetches in this set.
Mm-hmm.
And like by putting the enemy fetches in this set is going to make Modern more affordable for, I think, a larger number of people than it prices out by making them have to buy a few Modern Horizons 2 cards here and there.
It's also potentially going to make the individual cards from Modern Horizons 2 cheaper than the cards were in Modern Horizons 1, regardless of how good the cards are. Let's say these cards are a little less good this set because they don't mess up as much as they did in Modern Horizon 1. So the cards are a little less desirable. But the fetches being in here will soak up such a significant amount of the value that they'll make those cards even cheaper as a result of that. So strikes and gutters, I don't think it's necessarily a cash grab.
All right. I really like this next question from Ron, who asks, what does Death's Shadow need to be historic, viable? I think this one hits home for all of us because we kind of like playing Shadow decks here and there. We've experimented with it in historic. It clearly isn't passing mustard now.
Needs fetches. You need fetches to get your shocks so you can fix your colors better and do more damage to yourself more reliably.
I sometimes wonder if Street Wraith would be enough. Just give a Street Wraith some free velocity that comes at a life cost, and suddenly your shadows are a little bit more consistent.
I've had good. I've mentioned this a bunch of times. I've had good results with Shadow every time I've played it.
Playing it though, then
I think that it needs a favorable metagame. I don't know if we want to give it enough tools to make it good in the metagame that we're in right now, but I don't think that precludes it from being good in a future metagame. With the cards that it has right now. I think
people might be sleeping
deck.
on it. I doubt there's a significant number of people who are continually ongoing testing with Shadow,
right,
to tune it and make it the best deck it can be. So, and that's just part of a consequence of the format being so dynamic, right? And I'm sure there's many people who are playing with Shadow, but where there's so many cards coming in all the time that it's hard to, unless you're like, okay, Shadow is a good deck out of the gate and we can continue iterating on it. It's just, I'm surprised that the people aren't doing it because there's many people who love Shadow as they do love Phoenix. And when Phoenix comes back, people are immediately like, how do I make Phoenix good? Yeah,
but Shadow is not, Shadow is not good in the Phoenix metagame, and I think that might be part of what's going on here too, is it's not great in this kind of like spells matter meta that we're in right now. Maybe what Shadow would need, honestly, is to be Grixis Shadow, which means it would need access to like Stubborn Denial or something like that, like a 1 mana disruption spell that it doesn't have right now.
Yeah, I feel like one of the things I think I feel like I notice is that in a format like Historic, which doesn't have the raw speed of Modern, that some of the best decks that are creature based that stick around are the ones that can have interaction, either main deck or sideboard. So like Phoenix gets access to interaction on the sideboard. Decks like Rogues and decks like Auras have main deck and sideboard interaction. And decks like Gruul can't necessarily run stuff like that really interacts with the hand, interacts with the stack. And so I think that's something that you're right on, Dave, which is a deck like Shadow. If you can play something like Stubborn Denial or Memory Lapse or Draw on the Lock or something like that, then maybe that's something that as it gets better to incorporate that, then maybe it can improve its share.
Grant asks, and Shane, this question made me think of you because you kind of had to do this in the not so distant past. How do you deal with moving to a new local game store?
I guess that this depends on kind of your goals of an LGS. And for me, I've never really gone to an LGS to like be part of a community. And part of that is the frequency at which I can go is not as such where I can feel like I can really get to know people.
Yeah, Shane just goes to the local game store to stomp noobs.
Just, stomp some noobs, get some credit, go home with like 3 new Ultimate Guard boulders or something like that. No, I think that it is tough. Like it's tough for me. I've moved a lot. I have gone to a number of different LGSs. I've gone to LGSs when I'm visiting other towns. And then you've done the same. I know Stan and I think maybe even Dave have done that, where it's like I've been traveling for work. I've taken a deck and like found the game store like in LA. And I just go and just try to be a nice person and maybe have some fun games, have some fun interactions, talk to somebody and go home. My goal has always just been like, I want to get out of the house. I want to play some games of paper. Hopefully I have some fun interactions. Maybe I'll see some people I know by name, have some chit chat, and then go home. But if you're trying to go somewhere and you want to feel comfortable and you want to feel like you're part of a gaming community, I think that just gets it. If that's your goal, then do everything you can to try to feel out when what are the nights that are popular. Like, I think game owners are very forthcoming, like game store owners rather. We're like, hey, I'm going to call you up and I'm going to be like, how many people do you get for your modern? What nights are popular? How many people typically show up? Because I want to, I'm new and I don't want to come and have like 3 people, type thing. And I think people are willing to help you out there.
Yeah. So one of the things that Shane mentioned, traveling when playing Magic, is one of my favorite things to do, period. And seeing the sights, seeing the world through MTG, because I'm not doing that on the Pro Tour. And one of the things that I like about Magic in particular as this sort of social facilitator is that if you're playing a game of Magic against a total stranger, you already have something to talk to them about. And you have this almost forced conversation. So it creates this, ability to put you in front of someone and force you to interact with them. And whether your goal is making friends, stomping noobs, or just finding a place to play Magic from time to time, I think it's easier to do that in a new city than like certain other hobbies. Like maybe finding a local kickball team might be harder because all the kickball players know each other. And they have their core team, they got their shirts, they all work at the same company.
I mean, this is a great thing that you're really setting me up for the thing I was going to say, Stan, which is, I think this is like a question in some ways that acknowledges that it is hard to make friends when you are an adult.
Yeah.
Like, let's be real honest about this. And like,
yep.
It's hard to make friends when you're an adult. People make decisions to move places, to move away from their friends and do different things. And like, you got to make new friends. The only thing I would say to Grant is like, tactically, how do you deal with being at a new LGS? Be super nice to everybody. Don't come in and be nice. Like the Spike. Come in and like, don't come in and like bring your hot takes and stuff right away until you get to know some people. Like, be nice, be affable, be a good opponent, all those kind of things. Now, I know that Grant does not need that kind of information because Grant is a super awesome person. So that aside, the main thing I would say to Grant in the context of this question is it's worth the effort to lay down new roots when you're in a new city, because it is so much better for your life balance and your health to have friends than not. So it takes work. You have to do the work when you move. You do the work. This goes out to everybody who's out there. Go out and put yourself out there. Weird bend there, but okay.
I agree.
All right, last one. And this one is really close to home. Taiga Style asks, how are you guys really doing? Anything noteworthy in your personal lives you'd like to share with the nation or otherwise that you haven't gotten to in one of our many hilarious digressions?
Man, we all have stuff going on, right? I mean, I've got a new job. It's not even new anymore. It's like 7 weeks, I think. And man, going from being unemployed for like a number of months to having to work a fairly busy job back in the office with a commute is definitely kicking my butt. Like, I don't know how people who have to, go to an office with a commute, have obligations, have to figure out when are you going to grocery shop, when are you going to run errands, when are you going to go to the gym, all that kind of stuff. It's hard to build all that back in when my schedule is not built around it. And it's definitely given me less podcast preparation time. And it's definitely something where it's like I'm trying to relearn how to have a schedule.
Mm-hmm.
And Dave has had to do this his entire life. I don't know how he's done it.
He got a little kegerator.
That the company then went out of business, and now I don't have a little kegerator anymore.
Oh, no.
But, they gone.
Dave, how you doing?
I'm frantic, to be honest. Like, I have this job that is pretty difficult. It's pretty busy all the time. I'm in the middle of launching a couple of really big events for our company. And, I got 2 kids, trying to figure out how to be a good parent to them. And we're selling our house. Like, we just sold our house actually literally today, I think. I have a contract that I have to sign after we get off the air. We're moving, and
not to Denver, unfortunately.
It's hard. I've been really busy. How about you, Stan?
I've been doing great. I'm so relaxed.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
This turned into work chat, and I was like you guys for the last year or so, where work was tough, lots to do, not enough people. And I just got my first subordinate ever. For the very first time in my life, I have someone who reports to me, and I delegate work to them, and it's changed my life for the better. And Shane and Dave, I recommend you guys get more subordinates.
I'm trying to hire 5 people right now.
5 subordinates, you mean?
No, well, I'm not sure.
Why do you keep using this word?
Yeah, I'm not a fan of this particular texture that you're bringing to the conversation, Stan. Like, this is like yucking me a little bit. But yeah, I am working on trying to hire like 5 people right now, which is stressful on its own.
Yeah, hiring is tough.
Yeah. I mean, look, I'm glad that Taiga Style asked this question, because I do think that we are entering a period where I think life is going to get a bit more difficult for all of us than it has been maybe in the last 6 months or so, even maybe in the last year. And so we're committed to making the show and creating the podcast, but we are also committed to doing something that is sane for us to do. And so you might see a little bit less preparation coming up on some of the shows in the immediate near term. And things like, we're not grinding as many matches as a team as we were maybe 6-8 months ago. And I just want to be really clear with really upfront and honest with everybody who's listening to the show about that. Like, we're still fans. We're still enthusiasts. We love talking about Magic. We love playing Magic. We can fit it in.
We watch the PR streams, you know what I mean? And we're those people.
And but the main thing is, like, the show is here for us to talk with you all and for us to talk to each other. And that's the main thing that we want to enjoy. Right. And so we might have a few less pivot tables here and there. We might have a few less like deep cut insights and deep dives on decks in the immediate future until we kind of work through what's going on with each of us individually. But we are going to keep making the show because this is one of our main social outlets to be with each other and to be with all of you. So
maybe we can find some interns.
Sure.
To make pivot tables for us. All right.
I mean, why not?
I do think that wraps up this week's episode. I didn't even get to tell you guys about how I spent the weekend drafting Commander Legends, Time Spiral, Ikoria, and the Pauper Cube.
Is that what you were doing this weekend? I forgot about that.
That is literally what I was doing. And can I just say, great. I'm just going to drop this nugget, and then we can't ever speak of it. I loved drafting Commander Legends.
That's
loved
fun.
it. But if you haven't yet, listener, subscribe to our podcast. Do so. Get the latest episodes as soon as they come out. Next couple weeks, we're doing our full Modern Horizons set review. If you like what you hear, leave us a rating and review over on Apple Podcasts. If you'd like to submit a question to a future episode of the podcast, You can tweet us at The Dive Down or email thedivedown@gmail.com. If you'd like to support the show, you can join our Patreon over at patreon.com/thedivedown. You can also support the show by playing Magic on MTGO, using our partner Mana Traders to rent Magic Online cards. Use coupon code TheDiveDown2021. Get 15% off your first 2 months of renting Magic Online cards. Special thanks to the bands Nowhere and Spaceblood for letting us use their music. And until next week, be good to yourself, party people. We love you. And goodbye.
Take care of yourself and each other.
Mahalo.